Thank you guys for joining the HRMS Learning Series. Today's presentation will be on SAP Crystal Reports for Beginners. This webinar is designed for someone that is not used to Crystal Reports, and this will be a refresher. The concepts of grouping, sorting, and limiting who appears on the report using the Select Expert will be discussed. Two reports will be created, one using payroll information and another using HR information. With that, I'm going to hand it over to my presenter, Lynn Klee.
Thanks, Ben. Well, hello, everyone. As Ben said, my name is Lynn Klee, and I'm a trainer at Sage. Today, we're going to discuss Crystal Reports terminology. We'll create two basic Crystal reports using the wizard. And finally, we'll tweak our reports with some minor modifications. The topics which we'll cover are a small excerpt from a one-day Crystal training class where you can get hands-on learning. Now, as you can imagine, learning all the ins and outs of Crystal reports cannot reasonably be covered in this one-hour webinar. For those of you that are interested in learning more about Crystal reports, I'd like to take a few minutes to show you how you can access this class on Sage University. At the top, you want to go to sageu.com/HRMS. Down below on the right-hand side, you can view training by subject. On the left-hand side, go into Sage HRMS Crystal Reports. At the top, you can refine your search. Type in Crystal Reports level, and there's a total of 3 one-day training classes that will appear, level 1, 2, and 3. Today's training is derived from level 1, laying the foundation. Now, laying the foundation covers a lot more material. They get into all the different icons, all the defaults, formatting, all sorts of wonderful things with hands-on exercises. Now, if you're a customer with Gold support, you receive 50% off the instructor-led training, and anytime learning videos are free. We have a whole certification just on Crystal Reports. So if you just want to learn something particular like Select Expert or linking multiple databases, you can go right to that recording. And again, this is all free with Gold support. Now, if you enroll in a Sage HRM instructor-led course, be sure to enter a discount code for an additional 10% off. Use HRMS Resource. Now, if you don't have Gold support, you can still get the 10% off using this code. So to do this, just go to sageu.com/HRMS. Now, in the handout on pages 1 and 2 is the information on Crystal Reports training, along with the discount code and a link to Sage University. Today, I'll be using the Crystal Reports wizard to create 2 reports, one from the HR master table, which is called HR Personnel, and another from the US payroll table called UP-EMPL. So let's turn to page 3 in the handout and get started with our Crystal Reports terminology. I'm going to go ahead and bring over my image. So I've logged into Sage HRMS, and to access Crystal Reports, it has to be installed locally on your workstation. So on my workstation or laptop, if I've got the Sage HRMS client, Crystal needs to be installed where the client's installed. To access it once it's been installed, I go to Connected Services, and under Sage HRMS Tools, Crystal Reports. And again, if it's missing from here, it would either be permissions or someone hasn't downloaded it from the Sage knowledge base. Just log in there and search for your Crystal Reports download. I'm going to click on that. It's going to open up Crystal Reports. And there's 2 sections that appear. The top sections is where you can start a new report or pull up your recent reports. And at the bottom, if you have internet access, this is pulled directly from the SAP Crystal Reports themselves. Back to the top portion, we have our wizards. Today we'll be using the report wizard, but if you've used Crystal or you feel more comfortable creating one from scratch, you can also do a blank report. Over on the right-hand side are recent reports that I've accessed. Right now, I'm just going to pull up the employee address list. This is one of our canned reports that come with the software. So if you want to see where our canned reports are, if I want to open a report from the menu bar, I'm going to select File, Open. And in the Lookin field, you want to go to the drive or the location where the application of HRMS is installed. So normally that'll be on the server. So I would browse out to the server, and then you want to go down to a folder called Custom Reports. So what I normally recommend is you want to search the server for Custom Reports with no space, and it will get you to this location. If you've installed HRMS in the default location, it'll start underneath Program Data. When you get custom reports, we've got existing reports for HR, attendance, and train. We do not have payroll reports preloaded because they already come with the software. Whenever you preview a report in Payroll, that is a Crystal report. And at the top banner line, you can see the location. So if I want an HR report, here's some of the reports we can pull up. And all I did was I located the employee address list, clicked on it, and opened it. And here's the report. So we're going to create this report. We'll have the employee's name, their ID, home phone, and address. If I want to see what this report's going to look like, in the top row of menu items, I can click on Print Preview. And this would be what it looks like if I'm going to print it. Well, let's go back to the handout. We've got some theory and terminology we need to go through first before we jump into the creation part. If everyone wants to pull up what you've downloaded on page 3, Crystal Report Terminology. To create a report, when I first launch Crystal, on the Start page, we have our wizards. So we have Report Wizards. Now this is an excellent tool for new users. This will walk you through the report creation in a step-by-step process. The next term is Data Source. Well, where's the data location? What data am I going to pull? Now, for this webinar, the data source will be Sage HRMS data, and we're going to use Abra HRMS data action as our connection method. If I go back to the sample report that I've pulled up, on the Design tab, and we have two different views. We've got the Design, which is our working area, and then we have the Preview. On the Design tab, there's different fields in the working area, this white area. If I take my mouse and I point to the employee name, it tells me it's a text object. So a text object can contain text, which it does here. It's my column heading. It can contain multiple fields and calculations. The Design tab is where the report is built and contains all the information for our report. When working on reports, it's always recommended to start on the Design tab. Now you can do the same thing in the Preview tab if you want. I just don't find it as user-friendly because there's a lot of information that can be displayed on these reports all at once. Now this is a great area to do formatting in the Preview section. But please note, one of the advantages to the Design section is it takes up less network resources by working here. The Preview tab, as I mentioned, is the ability to view the report as it will appear when it's printed. So again, there's a little note in the handout you may want to highlight. Similar to the Design tab, you can also make adjustments from the Preview tab. Preview is the finished product, what it will look like. So if one of my fields are cut off or I need to resize it, I can. Grids and guidelines. Again, this is available in either my Design or Preview tab. I'm going to demo from the Design tab at the top left. The little triangles you see at the top or on the side are referred to as guidelines. They help in the placement of fields. If I want to view my guidelines from the menu bar at the top, I can select View, Guidelines, and if I just want it on my Design tab, I'll select that and I can get more of a visual, those lines going down and across. Well, where this is really handy is if I capture this guideline and I drag it, anything that is anchored to that guideline also gets moved. So watch again, I'm going to remove my column heading and also the field down below, simply by dragging the guideline. Now this will still work if I decide, hey, I don't want to view the guidelines, those lines going down and across. I can still move my fields. Now with the guidelines, when they're anchored, they'll have little red around the edges here. That means that they're anchored. The other one, if I go back to my view, is the grid. This helps in the placement of your fields, but it doesn't anchor things. So for demonstration purposes, I'm going to deselect the grid. On page 4 of the handout, they have a little screenshot of what the guideline looks like when it's actually anchored. the little red markings around the field. Now, to delete a guideline, if I decide I don't want a guideline here, I can just click on it and drag it off to the section outside of the white working area. So again, all I have to do is click and drop it into the blue section, and it's now gone. To add a guideline, simply click in the margin. You'll have a little triangle appear, and then drag off to remove. In the center of page 4 is a note, and it states that grids are turned off by default. To enable them, you want to go to View Grid. At the bottom of page 4 are some icons we're going to be using when we create our reports. The print preview one, I've already demoed. It is the 5th icon in the first row, and that will take you to your preview tab. Another way I could refresh or preview my report is this icon here. It's the 2 blue arrows circling themselves. I could click that icon or hit F5. So since I last pulled up this report, if someone's added a new hire, I can refresh it. Okay, and now that new hire will appear on my report. If I'm working on my report, and let's say I accidentally move a field, I thought, oh, I need to move that field back. Especially when we're just learning, use your undo. It is my favorite icon. So if I'm not sure what just occurred in my last change, I can go back to my undos. When I'm working with reports, or maybe it's a report someone else has created, there are certain things I like to see. One of them is, how is this report working? How is it sorted? So if I'm trying to find an employee, this particular report is grouped by company, and then it's sorted, and the A is telling me it's ascending order by the employee name. Something else I'd like to look at is called the Select Expert. This filters who and what is on your report. So when I click on that yellow funnel, I think of it as a filter. It shows me that the field P_active, which is the employee status, is equal to A. And here's my expression down below. Don't worry, we don't have to know how to create this expression down below. The wizard is going to help us with it. So right now, if an employee was LOA or terminated, they would not appear on my report. So this is a report that we're going to create. I'll have the employee name, ID, phone, and address. I always like to look at the last page of the report because quite often there may be totals. To go back and forth with your pages, we have our icons. This will show me the first page, previous page, and if you forget what these icons are, just hover over them. A little bubble will appear. Well, I want to go to my last page. I have totals for my employer and the totals for this report. On page 5 of the handout, we have the behavior of all these different sections down the left-hand side. These are also available in the preview. They're just shortened. D is detailed, and I have my group footer and my report footer and page footer. Back to the design view. The report header appears once at the top of the report on the first page only. So that might be the title of your report. The page header appears at the top of every page. Well, in this particular report, they wanted the report title to appear at the top of every page. So if I scroll up and I go through all the pages, I can see the name of my report. Another example of something that would be in the report header would be the column headings. If your report is grouped, there will be a group header and a group footer section. So in this particular report, they're grouping by company. The detail section, this is the body or the guts of your report. This is where I'm going to see a list of the employee name, their phone numbers, their address, and so on. The report footer, this appears once at the end of the report. So in this case, a grand total count of all the employees on my report. Page footer appears at the bottom of every page. So if I have 100 pages, this will print 100 times at the bottom of my reports. So if I scroll down, here's my date and time on all the different pages. Okay, so now it's time to create our report. I'm just going to close this report. I'm going to click the X, or I could go to File, Close. No, I don't want to save any changes. So here we are back to the very beginning on the start page. We want to create a report using our wizard. So I'm going to select the report wizard. If you've already got a connection, you can just go into that connection, expand it, and access your tables where you want to pull the information from. I'm going to assume this is the first time I'm in Crystal, and I'm going to create a new connection. So how do I connect to the data? I'm going to expand, create new connection, and go down to OLEDB-ADO. This is our recommended method of creating reports. So I'm going to expand that, make a new connection. Earlier, I mentioned that we always want to connect using Aber HRMS Data Access OLEDB Provider. Now, there are other ways to connect. This is just what we recommend in training. I'm going to finish. And down below are all the different tables I can pull from. Well, our first report, I want to pull from the master table for HR. And it's called HR Personnel. So a quick way to find that table is I just single click and start typing. So HRP, it found it for me. To select the table, I can double click or I can highlight and move it across. Now it could take 10 seconds to move across. We just have to be patient. I promise I did click. Here it is. If there were other tables you wanted to select, you could do so, but that's more of an intermediate advanced training lesson. Right now, we're going to stick with the basics. Everything I need is in this master table, HR Personnel. Now remember, if I'm working with payroll, the master table would have been called UPEMPL. I also refer to this as UPEMPL. If I have a Canadian payroll, it would start with CP for Canadian payroll and followed by EMPL, short for employee. Once I've selected my master table for HR, I'm going to click Next. And at the top, it says, OK, Lynn, it's time to select your fields. What fields do you want on this report? Well, I would like the employee name, but I can see here there's a couple of name fields and I'm not really sure what the difference is. If I click on Browse Data, it'll give me a random sampling. Last, first, middle name. Well, what does the other one do? Let's see. Browse Data, first, middle, last. I think I'm going to go with the Name One option. I can either double click or use my arrow to move it across. So that's the first field. The next field I want is the employee number. So as I scroll down, the fields start with a P underscore. Again, if I'm not sure, I can browse the data, and I recognize that as employee ID numbers. I'm going to select it. Home phone number. There's two different addresses in the system. There's one that starts with an F for F City, and there's another one that starts with an H for home. The home pulls from the demographics. The F pulls from the termination page, the forwarding address. So I want their home address, their home phone, so I'm going to use those H fields. P underscore H phone, I'm going to select that as my third column, and then the address. I'm going to find P underscore H street, down a little lower, select it, H city, H state, H zip. Now, if I've selected them in the incorrect order, maybe I wanted the employee ID number first, I can click on it and drag it up to reposition, put it in any position I want, or I can click on it and use my arrows to move it up. Once I'm done selecting all my fields, I'm going to click Next. Here's all the available fields on my report, and I want to group my report. Well, this particular report, I want to group by the employer, the company. I didn't select this already, but if I scroll down, I want to locate P underscore company. Now, if you're wondering, how do I know all these fields? Well, inside Sage HRMS, there's a data dictionary. I recently did a post up on Sage City, how to use the data dictionary and how to access it. So you may want to check that out. So I'm going to group by company, and I can choose my order, ascending or descending. If there was other groupings, I could select it. For now, let's click Next. Do I want any totals? Well, on our particular report, I wanted a total of the employees. So I want to select a field that's unique, either their employee ID or their name. I'm going to go with their full name. Now, when I select it, it's got max. I don't want a maximum. I want it to count. And there's two different counts. We've got the count and a distinct count. What's the difference? A count would count the number of record lines returned for that group. A distinct count would only count when it changed. So if I had two employees with the same name and I chose distinct count, it would only count it once. If I just did count, it would count them twice. Either case, I don't have the same name entered twice, so I could select either one of these. I'm going to count the number of record lines returned. Next is my group sorting. So right now, what kind of group ordering would you like to see? I'm going to say none, but if I wanted to, I could even get into only show me the top 5 or the bottom 5 groups. Click Next. Do I want a chart? No, thank you. Next. You may remember I only want to see active employees on my report. So I'm going to scroll down till I locate a field called P_active. We saw that earlier in the Select Expert. I'm going to select the field is equal to, and then if I click the drop down, there'll be a sampling of codes. I'm going to select A for active. Click Next. Do I want a template? Some of these templates are pretty busy, so I'm just going to go with no template for now and finish. Here we go. It automatically took us into the Preview tab. I like to pause now for some polling questions. So let's go ahead and I'm going to bring up our first polling question. I'm going to launch it. The correct answer is connected services. So how do you launch Crystal Reports from within Sage HRMS? It's from connected services. I'm going to close that poll. The next question I want to share, I'd like to go ahead and answer that poll. The correct answer is OLEDB-ADO. The third question, what is a master table for US payroll? Don't get tricked here. I haven't demoed this one yet, but we've talked about it. The correct answer for the master table for US payroll is UPEMPL. I'm not so sure that I like the company name repeated here. So what I'm going to do is go to my design. And it's sort of hard to find out, where am I? There's all these different sections. So here's a little tip. When I'm in preview, if I want this field, and if I go over to the far left, I can sort of guess it's my details, but it's hard to tell. Maybe it's my group header. If I click on my design, this field is highlighted. So yes, indeed, it's on my details section. I'm just going to delete that. Now, if I go to my preview, some of the column headings, they're not the best. So I want to change this to employee name. I'm going to work in my design just because that's my preference. I find it easier here. So I'm going to double click in my text field. And I'm just going to backspace and type in employee name. Click off of there. Same thing for this one, the P_H phone. I'm just going to call this phone. This time I'm just going to highlight, type in phone, street. Once you get the hang of it, it's pretty quick. City, state, and zip. Let's preview. Whoops, looks like I forgot to do this one. I can correct it from here, no worries. I'll just say this one is the ID number. Click off of there. All right, it's starting to look a lot better already, and we didn't have to do a whole lot. Let's go to the last page of our report. Scroll down. Aha, we've already got totals. I've got my total for this employer's 96, the grand total. Look at the grand total. It's a little squished, so maybe I want to do some cosmetics here. So I'm just going to click on this field, so when I go back to my design, I know where the field is. And I'm just going to take this and give it a little bit more space. I'm going to drag it to the right. Make sure when you're dragging it, you're keeping it in the same section. In this field here, I'm just going to click on it, wait till I get my double-headed arrows, and resize. Again, I may just want to line this other field above. And there we go. If I don't like all these underlines on it, I can right-click on the field, and I can tell it I want to format the field. And if I go to my border tab, I've got some single lines here. So if I just put them to none, click OK, looks a little bit better. Again, if I wanted to remove the lines here, I could. Format text, border tab, remove that double. And one last place to clean it up. Border, none. Now we have some special fields. This is probably the last modification I want to make to my report. Is at the bottom, they have things like date and time, printing at the bottom of every page. Can you remember what section that would go in? Would it be my report footer or my page footer? Should have had a polling question for this. It's the page footer at the bottom of every page. Over on the right, I have something called the Field Explorer. This is where I can insert fields that I didn't select using the wizard. If I wanted to insert a database field, I can click the plus symbol, go inside HR Personnel, which I selected as my table, and select a field just by dragging and dropping it. Anything with a check mark besides it means it's already used in my report. So I already have the underscore name field inserted on the report. Well, I don't want to work with this table. I'm going to close it. This is a special field. So I'm going to go down and expand special fields. I want to use, let's say, the print time. When was this printed? I can insert it. Print date. I'm going to insert it here. And we also have page numbers. Page N of M, I'm going to put here. Now again, if I had my little guide, I could have used a guideline, anchored everything to it, help me in my placement. And preview. There I have it. Now maybe I want to put a text field in front of this saying print date. So if I go back to my design tab, here's my field. I'm just going to move it over a little bit. And I want to insert a text field. Well, earlier the wizard did the column headings for us. So I'm going to go to the menu bar. If I want to insert something, insert text. So I want to insert my text object. I'm going to click and draw a little box. Don't worry about the placement or the size of it right now. And I'll call this print date colon, and maybe I'll put a space in there. Now when I preview, there it is. But what if I wanted these fields closer together? I'm going to give you a little bit of an advanced tip. to Crystal Reports, because once you get working with a report, you have the raw data and you always find yourself wanting to perfect it, make it better. Well, here's something from our advanced classes, is you can embed a field. I can take this and drop it in to my text field. So if I got my field here, let me try it again. Click on it, drop it in. Did it embed it? Let me see. No, it didn't. Let's try it one more time, see if I can get it. Like I said, it's a little bit of the advanced. Going to drag and drop this. There it is. See how I have that line? It's anchored it now. When I preview, again, I need to resize this a little bit, and that's the handiness of having that preview tab. I'm going to wait till I get the 2 arrows, drag it to the right, and now I can see it. But I didn't have to go this far. I could have just had my text field and then my special field. I did not need to embed it. But if you want to, you can do that. Opens up a whole world of opportunities when you start thinking along those lines. Well, now that we have this wonderful report, I like to save it. File, Save As, and I'm going to call this Lynn's Employee Address List. Save. All right, job well done. We've created our first report. Let's do another report. I can either close this report by going to File, Close, or I could just, multiple ways to do it. I could close out of Crystal entirely, or in this case, I just want to open a new report. I'm going to go back to my start page and choose Report Wizard. That way I know I'm going to the Report Wizard and not the blank. That's a little bit more advanced. If I scroll up, I could, since I've already accessed it, go through HRMS Data Access, or I could create a new connection. So I'm going to walk through how to create a new connection again. I'm going to expand, create new connection, go down to my OLEDB ADO right here. Don't get it confused with the one above it. Make new connection, and select the Aber HRMS Data Access OLEDB provider. Well, we've already got it done, so I'm just going to cancel out of here, but I want to show you the steps again. So here it is right below it. If I expand it, this time I want to create a report, and it's going to be from my payroll table. And the report we want to create is an employee count by supervisor. I want to locate that UPEMPL, UPEMPL. Select it, click Next. What fields do I want on my report? This is where I get to select them. Well, I want the employee's full name. So when I scroll down, there's no underscore fields here. Well, I'm going to select something called full name. If I browse data, there it is. Slightly different terminology in this table. If I wanted the employee's first name or last name as separate fields, I could also select them, but I'm going to go with the full name, select. I also want to know if the employee is a part-time employee or not. Scroll down, part-time, select. Their status. Here's the status. Select. Maybe I want to know what position they're in. Select that. And what state. Are they local for their supervisor or not? Again, once I've selected it, if I wanted to rearrange them, I can use my arrows or drag and drop. Next is our grouping. How do I want to group the report? Well, since it's going to be an employee count by supervisor, I want to group by supervisor. Now, I didn't insert supervisor as a report field, so I'm going to go down here and select supervisor. Again, most of these fields are pretty user-friendly. You can pretty much guess what they are, and if you're not sure, just browse the data. Select my supervisor, and I want it listed in ascending order. Next, they're guessing what I want totals of. Do I want totals of part-time or their status, active, terminated? No, I want to remove these. I actually want a count of the employee by supervisor. So I'm going to select full name, and I would like a count. Click Next. How do I want to sort? It's going to sort by supervisor. That's good. Next. Any charts? No. And my record selection. Well, I only want active employees. I'm going to use the status field and select it. Now remember, this is slightly different than the P_active we used before. Is equal to, but when I look in my values, it's not so user-friendly. What's a 1 and what's a 3? I'm not sure, so I'm not ready to commit to this record selection just yet. Once I preview my report, I'll make my decision then, because I'll recognize the employee's name, whether they're active or terminated. Next. Do I want a template? Nope, I'm good. Let's finish. Okay, so if I go back to the Design tab, here's my report. But when I preview it, I don't see any employees here, and I'm on my first page. So I'm going to go back to my Select Expert. It kept part of my expression saying that the status is equal to 0. Well, that's not what I want. So I'm going to delete that. Click Delete and OK. Refresh my data. Now I also could have refreshed using these blue arrows or went into my print preview. Here we go. That looks pretty good. Not bad for a starting report. Now let's look at the status. Well, I know Brooke. So a status of 1, this is my active employee, and John is my terminated. Or sorry, Mark's my terminated. There we go. Brooke is active. And to prove that Mark is a terminated employee, if I go back to HRMS and I pull up Mark Parker, go to my employee find. There he is right there. Wouldn't you know it? I already searched for him. And if I go to the class schedule, it says he's a terminated employee. So I do not want to equal to Mark Parker, number 3. Select Expert, Status is not equal to, and in the drop down, it's a random selection. I'm going to say 3. I could have typed in the number 3 if I wanted to. Click OK, refresh, and here's my report. Now that I've used the status field, I don't necessarily need it on my report anymore. I just put it there so I could verify the information. So I can come here and delete the field. A couple ways I can do it. I can click on the field and hit delete, or if there's multiple fields, I can left click my mouse and just sort of lasso the fields I want to delete. It doesn't have to be perfect as long as I'm touching them. And now I'm going to hit delete on my keyboard and they're done. So if I want to do something to a group of fields, I can left click, draw a box around them, just as long as they're touching. Maybe I want to move them a little bit to the left. Whoops, I moved that a little bit down. I'm going to do my undo feature on that one. Try it again. Drag in a straight line, release, click off of there to deselect them. Well, what if the fields you want to move were sort of all over the place? Well, you can click on that field and hold down your control key and you can select those fields. Or you can move them one at a time. And there's my report. I'm going to go to the last page. There's my grand total. So this is a good report. I can see how many employees the supervisor has reporting to them. Some have a lot more. Now that supervisor name does not need to be repeated over and over again, so I'm just going to delete that, clean it up a little bit, maybe even format that field and remove the underline. And there's my report. Let me clean this up a little bit more. Let's say I want to remove these underlines. Again, I'm just going to the border tab like we did in the other report. Pretty nice report. But what if I just want the totals? I don't want all the detail section. If I go to my design tab, I can suppress the details. Again, here's a little intro into more of the advanced Crystal. If I right-click on my detail section and tell it to suppress it, I know I've got a condition on it because it has lines beside it. So now when I preview, there's my count. Now this field up here doesn't look very good. And if I go to my design tab, it's my group header. So I could either delete it or I may want to bring back the detail. So in my case, I want to suppress it. So now when I look at it, that's starting to look a lot better. If I want to bring the detail back to prove who makes up those employees, those numbers, I right-click on that section and tell it don't suppress. Preview. Ta-da! All that information is back. Now again, if I had more time, I'd probably come into my column headings and modify those. Just double-click and type them in. To save the report, I'm going to go to File, Save As. I'm going to put it in the HR folder, or you could browse out to a different location. I'm going to go with the HR folder for now, and I'm going to call this Employee Count by Supervisor. Save. Now, the one thing I haven't done yet is given a title to either one of these reports. And I want the title in my case to be on the report header so it only appears once. So to do that, I'm going to insert a text object. Just draw a box, don't really care where it is for now. I can always fix that later and move it. And inside it, I want to type in the title of my report. If I ever make a spelling mistake, I can just double click inside of it and correct it. Now I want this centered, so I'm just going to resize this so it goes across the entire width of my report. And I'm sure everyone recognizes these icons at the top here. To center, preview, and there's the title of my report. Now it might look better if I made it bigger, bold, and so forth. But again, we have all these icons at the top that you can use. All right, let's go back to our last set of polling questions. I want to go ahead and open those up. You would like the company logo, oh, I haven't done this one, to appear at the top left-hand corner of all pages. Okay, so let's see how to do that before we jump into our first polling. I want to appear, in my case, just at the top of my first page. I'm going to insert, and I want to insert a picture. I'm going to browse to the location where I have this saved. And I've got it inside Program Files x86, Sage, Client, and I'll choose ZSI. I'm going to click in the section where I want it to appear, and of course, it's way too big. I'm going to click on that, drag my arrow, and just resize it. Now, it's put too much space in the report header section. So see how we have these little dividers going across? I'm going to wait till I get my double-headed arrow and drag it straight up and release. And now when I preview, isn't that beautiful? At the top of my first page. But our polling question is going to be slightly different. How do I get it to appear on all pages? Let's go ahead and take a look. And this was a bit of a trick question because I don't want it on just the first page. I want it on all pages. I want it on all pages, so I'm going to select page header for the top. And the last polling question of this session. You can move multiple fields at once. True or false? And the correct answer is true. I can use my control and click on the fields, or I can left mouse and just drag a box around the fields I want to move. Go ahead and close that poll. That is it for the hands-on portion of the 2 Crystal reports that we were using. Clay, I'm probably going to turn everything over to you. What have we got in our questions and answers? I know we haven't got very much time left.
We have only a couple of questions that have come in. Just going to try to blow through them. I know we only all be posted on Sage City. A couple great questions. One question was, does Crystal Reports save your report automatically? And there are some autosave features and functionalities in Crystal Reports. However, personally, and what we like to recommend is save early and often. Pretty much everyone, both Linda and I, anybody who's built Crystal Reports have been burned by a Crystal Report that froze up in an opportune moment. Definitely save early and often. Second question, can you sort by fields that aren't on the report? You absolutely can. You can both sort, group, and filter by fields that aren't on the report at all. There was somebody who came in a little bit late and asked about how to access Crystal Reports from Connected Services. That should be in the handout. So make sure you download that handout to follow through. But it's basically just clicking on Connected Services, and as long as Crystal Report or local workstation, you'll see it appear in the list. And that's what I got.
Okay, thanks, Clay. So just to recap, we've gone over the terminology, how things behave in the different sections. We've created 2 reports, and we've done our modifications. So again, just a reminder, if you do want more information, you want to sign up for the introduction level on Sage University, the course you want to take is Laying the Foundations, Level 1. And here's the link you would go to. Don't forget to enter the code HRMS Resource for an additional 10% off. Some upcoming topics that we have. We have a couple of classes coming up. We've got a repeat of today, and that will be later this month on February 20th at 1 p.m. The next topic in our learning series is customizing Sage HRMS. And if there's any changes in the Q1 2020 product update, we'll also be covering those. Just a heads up on that. And they will occur March 27th and March 30th. We also have in the works a special webinar designed exclusively for our Gold customers. And this is going to focus on free anytime learning videos that are available on Sage University and the benefits of Gold support. So if you'd like a refresher on the HRMS modules, or if you have coworkers that are new to HRMS, this webinar is for you. We have lots of free tutorials. And I guess we're almost at the top of the hour. It's that time to wrap everything up. On behalf of Clay Stauffer and myself, I'd like to thank everyone for attending today's learning series on Crystal Reports for Beginners. Goodbye for now.